everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make no-bake peanut butter bars and a French dip with an au jus sauce. So we're going to start out by getting our meat warmed up for our French dip. We're just going to be using some sandwich meat, some roast beef sandwich meat. Cut it open. And we're warming it up because we want to make a little bit of the au jus sauce from it, as well as we're going to be putting a bit more meat on our grilled cheeses. So they'll want it just to be a little bit warmer so it gets nice and melty. I'm going to put about a teaspoon of butter in my saute pan here. And then I've got our roast beef, which I'm going to do just a quick kind of chop on it. There we go. And once this is melted, we're gonna throw in our roast beef, and I'm just gonna saute it up and warm it quickly and let some of the little juices come out, and then we'll make our au jus sauce from that. So while that is melting, we can start for our no-bake peanut butter bars. I'm gonna put in a bag of chocolate chips and essentially a double boiler. I've got a metal bowl over my pot of boiling water, and this is to have our chocolate melt. And you don't ever want to melt chocolate directly in a pot because it will burn really, really easily. You think, oh, I can stir, but I said chocolate burns so fast. There's not a lot of fat in it, so it just burns. And we're going to put about 1/4 cup of peanut butter in here as well. And as this starts to melt, the peanut butter, and we'll mix that together. That is going to be the topping to our peanut butter no-bake bars. Get the butter melting over here. While we're waiting for the butter to melt, you're gonna start out with 3 cups of graham cracker crumbs. So I'm gonna use 3 packs, and then I'm gonna smash them up in a Ziploc baggie, and that will be our base for our peanut butter bars, which we'll be adding also peanut butter and powdered sugar too. But I like to give them a little smash in here first before I add them. But we're going to smash these up into smaller pieces. You could also do it in a food processor, or you could buy graham cracker crumbs from the store. They're in the baking aisle, where you can just get them already pre-smashed. And we need about 3 cups of graham cracker crumbs, which I find is around 3 packs of graham crackers, because once they smush up, they fill in a little bit more. And we're just gonna smash these down with our hands. And then I'm gonna let a little bit of air out. You let the air out, that way you can smash it up nice. You could use a rolling pin if you wanted to. I find graham crackers smash up really easily because they're pretty kind of soft as a cracker, very dry. So we'll break these up. But before we do that, let's give our chocolate a little stir, because we want to make sure our peanut butter melts all the way in there. So it's melting nice and quick. There. And then our butter in our saute pan has completely melted. So we are going to put in our chopped up roast beef. If you had leftover roast beef from a dinner, like a pot roast, you could use that as well. And we're essentially just warming up our roast beef here and just letting a little bit of the drippings get into our butter. But we're also going to be using some beef bouillon to make our au jus. So this is essentially, you don't have to have a beef roast to do the au jus. We're going to let that saute up, and then we're going to work on, here, I'm going to put my lid on and smash it. Then you could roll it and just break it up into nice, doesn't have to be super fine. I find that I like a little bit of chunk, like graham cracker chunks in my peanut butter bar. But if you prefer a smoother texture, then you're gonna wanna crunch it up even, like grind it up even smaller. So if you like it to be fine, a food processor would probably be the best. But I like mine just a little bit of a crunch, so as you're eating the bar, it's not all creamy. And you can see they actually smash up fairly easy. Beautiful. Nice. Let's give our meat a little toss. We don't want to overcook and make it crispy or anything like that. We're just letting out some of those juices out of it and warming it up so that it will help the cheese melt on our grilled cheese. Lovely. Beautiful. And let's finish up. We just a little bit more smashing and then we are golden. So I like it where you kind of got a nice rough texture to it. You can't see, but when we dump it out, I'll open it up that way you can see better. So kind of, I've got like a rough texture because I like mine a bit more chunky. You can make yours fine if you wanted, but I like the texture. We give our chocolate a stir. Beautiful. Lovely. Now I'm going to just turn my skillet off over here for a second. Now in this pan we're going to add 1 stick of softened butter. So if you had butter that was left out on the counter overnight, that would work perfect, or you could soften it up in the microwave. So you're going to want 1 stick of softened butter, which is 1/2 cup. And then we're going to add 1.5 cups of creamy peanut butter. You can use any brand that you want. We have some good old Aldi's brand. So I'm going to guesstimate my 1.5 cups because I think measuring peanut butter is a pain in the butt. So here is about 3/4 of a cup there. So I'm going to just do 2 big scoops for mine. And that's what I say, you can always be a little over on the peanut butter. It's fine. You don't have to worry about having exact measurements. I'd rather err on the side of being over than under. So we've got our delicious, our peanut butter and our butter, and we are going to mix them up and whip them. I've got my hand beater here because peanut butter is hard to whip up on yourself. We're gonna just cream them together. Mix it until you have them all incorporated. And then we'll add in our powdered sugar in just a second. I'm creaming, I'm gonna give our chocolate a little stir. And then I can see that it's completely melted, so I'm going to turn the heat off. And I'm just gonna sit it over there, and that will keep it nice and soft. Okay, we have our 1.5 cups of peanut butter and 1 stick of butter creamed together. Wow. Before we move on to the next step of our peanut butter bars.
You had a question, are you making Buckeyes?
Essentially, they're like a deconstructed Buckeye. So instead of rolling out and hand dipping each of the Buckeyes, you push it out into a bar form and then you drizzle the peanut butter on top. So it is exactly like a Buckeye, just not the extra work. I've heard them, I call them like no-bake peanut butter bars. They've been called like lunch lady peanut butter bars, but they're just essentially a Buckeye. So we've got I pulled off our roast beef, and we want to leave some of those drippings in there because that will also help flavor our au jus. And we're gonna put another teaspoon of butter in here. This is gonna give our sauce a little bit of a richer flavor. I'm gonna turn my heat on to about a 6, and we're gonna mince up a little bit of onion. You don't need much, so I'm gonna mince up, it's gonna be about a tablespoon of minced up onion, and I'm gonna do a nice fine chop on it, and we'll saute that up in the butter and with some garlic, and we'll let those caramelize for a second, and then we'll add our broth. So I'm doing a nice mince on this. So it'll be similar in size to my garlic. And I'm going over it because this is we're gonna kind of derive a little bit of this onion flavor for our broth, but it'll also give onions, I think, just pair well with roast beef. So we've got our onion minced in there, and we're gonna do about a teaspoon of garlic in here as well. And I'm just gonna give it a stir, and we're gonna let those caramelize for a second. While these are caramelizing, we are going to add in 1.5 cups of powdered sugar to our mix. Let me get a measuring cup. And then we'll add our graham cracker crumbs. I find it's easier to mix in the powdered sugar first than the graham cracker crumbs. So that's why I do it in that order. You could also just throw it all in together at one time if you wanted to. So 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. And then I'm gonna give, it's off the heat, but I give it a quick stir just to keep it nice and warm. And then we're gonna mix in our powdered sugar with our peanut butter and butter. For those of you who joined us later, it's 1.5 cups of peanut butter, creamy peanut butter, with 1 stick of butter and 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. We're gonna mix it together. There we go. And now we're gonna add in our graham cracker crumbs. And we need about 3 cups, which I use 3 packages of it, so it's a little over, but that's fine. So I'll mix in that, and we'll see if we need to add any more. I'm gonna mix in our graham cracker crumbs with our peanut butter, powdered sugar, and butter. We'll come back to that, but I see that my onions are caramelizing over here. Whoop! Over here nicely. So let's give this a quick stir. We see how we have a nice browning color on them. That is where they have caramelized, the natural sugar in them is coming out. So we've got our caramelized.
You got a question? What are you making?
We are making a roast beef, like French dip grilled cheese. With an au jus and then a no-bake peanut butter bars. So right now we are going to add in the seasonings for our au jus, and we're gonna let it simmer. So I'm gonna put in about 1.5 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. Give that a little stir. And then I'm gonna put in a spoonful of beef bouillon. We're going to warm this up, and then we'll add in some water. You could use regular beef broth if you want, but I find beef bouillon has a bit more flavor. And I'm going to use about 1 cup of beef or water. I'm going to find myself a whisk. And I'm just gonna pour it right over the beef bouillon. That way you don't have to go through the process of like warming up your water and mixing it. You can do it right in the pan here. Give it a nice stir it in, whisk it. Just like this. And then we're gonna let this simmer for a few minutes while we start making our grilled cheese. But we can first push this down, we'll finish that, and then we'll get our grilled cheese on. So I'm gonna mix it. You see how we've kind of got a nice clumpy mix, it kind of sticks together. I'm gonna mix it for about 30 more seconds. This will also help break up some of the smaller pieces. Make sure all of our peanut butter is mixed around with our graham cracker crumbs. Perfect. And look how it turns into this lovely thick mixture. And this is where it kind of differs from Buckeyes. Instead of rolling all of this into individual balls, and Buckeyes has a little bit more powdered sugar in it, I'm just gonna push it down into a non-stick, this is a ceramic pan. You could also line it with parchment paper if you wanted to, but I'm just gonna stick it all down here and then smush it down. And then we will cover it with our melted chocolate and peanut butter. There we go. But we will smush it down in just a second. We'll move on to our grilled cheese and then we'll hop over there. That way we can do that while our grilled cheese is melted. I love peanut butter. Move this out of the way so we have a little bit more space over here. You can see our au jus sauce over here is simmering, letting all the flavors come out. We're going to be using sourdough bread. You could also use a French baguette at home if you wanted to. But this is the sourdough we made the other day, or last night. We baked it last night. And we stole some pieces for breakfast. And I'm going to cut off 4 slices of our homemade sourdough bread. A nice crusty bread works well for any type of grilled cheese. So we got there. And one more slice. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover one side of each slice of sourdough with some softened butter. I put it on my bread versus putting it on my skillet because it will just kind of burn on your skillet instead of on there. So let me get my softened butter with my butter paddle. And I'm gonna turn this down to a low simmer over there because I don't want it to reduce too much, but I want the onions and the garlic to really leach out their flavors into the broth. And then you have the acidity from the Worcestershire in there that just makes it lovely. And we'll put a little bit of butter on this one. Beautiful. Now I am doing one of mine with Havarti cheese. Move this out of the way so you guys can see it. And one with cheddar. My husband prefers cheddar over Havarti, but I love Havarti. So we're gonna put down a piece of bread first. I've got my skillet warming up to it's about a 6.5 to a 7. I'm gonna use Havarti on mine. I'll put cheddar on my husband. I think Swiss is also very common to use on it, but I'm not the biggest fan of Swiss cheese. I feel like it lacks a little bit of flavor. So I've got there. My goal is not to overflow the cheese because I don't want it to burn on my skillet. So I always try to make sure there's no overage. And then we'll get this side for my husband. And he loves cheddar, and that kind of, if you think of like an Arby's beef and cheddar, you've kind of got this with a nice little dip. You could also add some sauteed mushrooms and onions to this, and it would be delicious. There we go. And then here is our roast beef, our sandwich meat that we heated up earlier with a little bit of butter. And the reason why I heated it up...
If you have some questions, you can ask some questions.
Yeah. Definitely ask questions away. But I heated it up that way because you want to put a lot of meat on a French dip. They're big sandwiches. But if you just put cold meat straight up like sandwich meat on there, your cheese will not melt. So I pre-warmed it, and I could use the drippings in my au jus sauce. So I'll put that here. And then we're gonna cover it with another layer of cheese. Havarti for me. And cheddar for my husband. I think he has part of one. Perfect. And then I'll steal a piece of cheddar. And now we're gonna put our tops back on, and our skillet is warming up. While our skillet is warming and doing the toasting, we have ours over here. I'm gonna give it a good stir. That's gonna be our au jus sauce. We're now gonna push our peanut butter mixture down. I find getting a piece of wax paper or parchment is so much easier than trying to use a spoon because everything just sticks to the spoon. So we're just gonna kind of push it off. And then...
You got a question? What cut of meat would be the best to make homemade roast beef with?
Well, if you were to do it, just if you had a beef roast in the oven, you could use that. I find chuck roasts are really delicious and tender, but it would be more of a stringy roast beef, but I think they are better cut. But you could do just a regular beef roast or beef tenderloin where you cook it and then you gotta slice it really, really thin, or you could dice it up to make it more manageable. But as far like, I will say avoid, I think London broils or whatever cut of meat that is terrible. They always turn out really tough when you cook them. That's why I love the chuck roast, but that's gonna be more of a stringy one. But you could do it in your Dutch oven and then use the drippings to make your au jus, and it would be delicious. So I'm gonna push it down all over. And then I say it's really easy if you use a wax paper or parchment paper because you can just peel it off and you have a nice flat surface. And then I'm gonna take our chocolate. This was a bag of chocolate chips with 1/4 cup of peanut butter. And we're gonna pour it over and spread it out. And then you have to let it sit for a couple of hours for it to harden. But it takes about 3 or so hours for it to truly harden. You could pop it in the fridge if you want to for a quicker hardening. But we'll spread it over, and then I add one more thing. I add a little bit of Teddy Grahams to the top. Mainly because I think Teddy Grahams are the cutest thing ever. But let's spread it out. You could also do them in a smaller pan and make really thick bars. But I try to make ours last a little bit. These are our favorite here. And so I try to make them a little bit thinner. That way you get more pieces out of it. There we go. I've got it spread out. I can hear, I'm not gonna let any of this go to waste. Again, these are for my family. So I'm fine sticking my fingers in it. Delicious. I hear ours pan sizzling. So let's flip these. Okay, we've got our first flip done. I always do 2 flips because the first one is for really heating up the bread and starting to warm up the cheese. And then my second flip is for color. Now, let's do this. So we're done with our chocolate sauce. We have it over here. And then I like to give it a good shake. This helps the peanut butter or the melted chocolate even out. And then you can use, these are just like all these versions of Teddy Grahams, but I put them on there. That way I can cut them into little bars and each one will have a little Teddy Graham on it. And I think they make very cute little bars. So we'll put them in here. And that way you can cut out like a perfect little square, and there's a Teddy Graham in the middle of each one. Since we use graham crackers in the mix, it works well. Beautiful. And that way also my kids understand what a serving size is. They could come in there and take half this if you let them. There we go. So we have our cute little, ran away. Perfect. I think I hear them sizzling over here, so let's see if we're ready. Good, we'll do a nice flip. And now we're gonna really, this one is about adding up the color and getting the last little melt on the cheese. And that's why it's important to warm up the beef inside, because if you were to do it without warming it up, that meat, since it's such a thick sandwich, would still be cold. We have our au jus over here. I'm gonna give it a good whisk. And here's my whisk. And this, again, to recap it, we first cooked our sandwich meat in a little bit of butter. Then we pulled it out, melted about another teaspoon of butter, added minced up garlic and onions, sauteed until they were caramelized, then put about 1.5 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce, and then a cup of water and a scoop of beef bouillon. And it has been simmering, and now I will be ready to put it in a little bowl. We'll be ready to present in just a second. So I'm gonna flip. I think we should have good coloring on these now. Here, this one's perfect. Has a nice golden crust on it. We'll let them sizzle up real quick. And I'm gonna ladle out my juice into our bowl. And the way you just do it is you just take your sandwich, just like if you have a French dip, and you dip it in the au juice. And it gives you a nice kind of a beefy broth flavor to it. And it's really delicious. You could do, if you wanted to do it with like an actual cut of meat, you could do a chuck roast in a Dutch oven and slow cook it for like 4 hours with some onions and a little bit of beef broth and Worcestershire sauce and garlic, and then use the drippings from it to make the au jus sauce. Beautiful. See how these are perfect. Okay. So I'm going to take that off the heat. This one's mine. And let's cut into this bad boy and show you how we're going to eat it. So you see we've got a nice things, and then you're just going to dip it in. Get that off. And then a nice delicious and cheesy, and has a great roasty flavor. The au jus really brings in a lot of flavor. I'm gonna pop my husband's off. And I just wanna thank you guys for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, but for a recap, we made peanut butter no-bake bars, which are kind of like a Buckeye. The chocolate will still need to set, but that takes about 2 hours, and then we can cut into them. And then we made a quick roast beef sandwich with au jus, and that was it today. Thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.